Hello, everybody. Audio. Hello, everybody. Audio. Hope you guys can hear me. I go through this every single time. Hope you guys can hear me. I go through this every single time. All right. I know I didn't announce this. I go through this every single time. All right. Just give me a moment. I know I didn't announce this. I go through this every single time. All right. We're good. Hello, everybody. I know I didn't announce this. I just decided to do this on the fly before I leave my office. Christabel says you're loud and clear. Cleophas Jovu, hello to you. Hope you guys had a fantastic day and you're safe. If you're on your way home, drive carefully. Guys, there's something. Koza Bewa, yes, I know there was an echo. What I had to do was change my settings on my audio. I imagine it's clear now. Tell me if it's clear. I think it is. I think we're doing well on the sound front. Peter Shakes. Good evening, Mr. Muero. Good evening to you. I will not keep you long this evening. Just a few things I'd like to sort of throw your way, see what you think. Silwale says, I just received a notification and boom, I'm here. Hello, Uncle. Hello to you. Peace. Bless you. Bless you. Bless you. Clear now. Gossip, clear now. Wonderful. Thank you so much. You know, the other day I was doing a live broadcast and someone says to me, Mr. Moyer, what you should do is place the microphone underneath your chin and speak from there. I tried that before I turned on the camera, and I must tell you, it looked awkward. It looked awkward. So I'm going to stick with this format for now, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, look, I know many of you are watching the news. If you're probably watching ZNBC, and I apologize for having to interrupt you. Of course, if you choose to be with me for a few moments, I'm very grateful for that. There's something I need to share with you, and it disturbs me, it bothers me. And as you know, when a vlogger goes through this experience of feeling uneasy about something, our natural inclination is to share it with you. That's the reason sometimes we get ourselves in trouble, because we have this propensity, we have this proclivity to share everything that's on our heart with the general public. And unfortunately, that's the calling we have. The only thing, though, is that sometimes when we do share, we have to be mindful of how we say certain things and in the way we say them, and to sort of avoid any type of negative repercussions. Of course, that's not always possible. You don't always get it right. And so consequently, sometimes you fall into a ditch. Hopefully, I won't do that tonight. There's something on my heart I need to share with you, and it's this. This issue here, Zambian prisoners and their 2 weeks home vacation. This is a very controversial topic. And let me begin by sharing with you that the reason the reason the opposition, many political parties, from my understanding and my observation, of course, I'm not a politician, so I wouldn't speak conclusively for them, but what I am is a registered voter. I'm a Zambian citizen. I am a part and parcel of this beautiful nation that we call Zambia. And as being such, I feel that I have a voice, and my desire to share my opinion on this issue is legitimate as far as I'm concerned. Of course, you may feel or think differently, but that's between you and God. Now, this thorny issue is so thorny that opposition politicians don't like touching this because they don't want to be labeled as insensitive, or they don't want to be labeled as a leader with a heart. Because in Zambia, we have this thing, I don't know where we get it. You know, Zambians naturally root for the underdog. It's not a bad trait to have. I think it's a wonderful thing when you see someone down and out on their luck, and they're trying to do everything they can to better themselves and to be a good citizen, and they're going against the grain and they're fighting the odds in the right way, their heart's in the right place. That's a wonderful thing, to root for an underdog. But I find that in Zambia, we root for underdogs just for the sake of rooting for an underdog. There's so many people that just look at someone, no, give him a chance. No, leave him, without looking closely at the ramifications, the implications, the knock-on effect, the ripple effect of some of the things we do as Zambians. And I feel, and I'm going to walk very carefully, I'll tread carefully here, because like I said, this is a very sensitive topic. But it's a topic that I think all of us really have to sort of engage in. This is a really important topic to have a conversation about, because it affects everybody. I think that most people I know someone that's been incarcerated or that's been to prison. If you've lived any length of time, especially in Zambia, it's very easy. In Zambia, it's really easy to go to jail. I mean, I've been to jail twice. Not to prison, I've been to jail twice. And both times had to do with someone accusing me of assaulting them. Because, you know, in this country, you can just wake up, get a medical report and say so-and-so assaulted me. Boom, the police are at your doorstep. But thankfully, in my case, when I was accused of assault, which I didn't do, by the way, it was an attempt at extorting money from me. The street vendors were trying to get money from me, and so they falsely accused me of assaulting them. So somehow they obtained a medical report. I don't know how they did that. And then they said to me, if you want us to drop these charges, you need to pay. There were two of them. You need to pay us 5,000 kwacha each, which I refused. I said, we're not doing that. Even the police, the arresting officer, the man that came to pick me up, because I was literally arrested, thrown in jail for a night. I spent the night in jail. The arresting officer said to me, he said, Mwewa, just pay these guys. Just pay them and forget them. I said, I'm not doing that. The devil is a liar. I'm not doing that. And so we went to court. Took me 4 months. I didn't even hire a lawyer. Of course, I'm not trying to suggest that I'm big, bad, and awesome, but I knew the merits of the case. I knew I didn't do this, and I knew that our justice system, to me, is fair. And I figured, I deduced that when I do go to court representing myself based on the evidence, I would win. And everybody told me, everyone I spoke to said, no, Mwewa, in fact, as long as the person has a medical report, Mwewa, you are in problems. You are in problems, Mwewa. Just pay them. I said, no, I'm not doing that, because if I do it for one, it's going to open the floodgates. If these guys, for one moment, think that they have an upper hand and I pay them money for something I didn't do, my thought was they would come through here by the droves. So I said, forget that, man. I'm not doing that. So I went to court. 4 months it took me, back and forth. Finally, I was acquitted, not guilty, not completely, not on both issues of assault. So I said all that to say this: if you've lived any length of time, you've been to jail, and especially if you're my age, 51 years old, 52. Chances are you've had a brush with the laws. Someone has accused you of something, and you've gone to jail. So, having said that, I know that the issue of prison reform is a very controversial issue, because when I was growing up, what we perceived as the correctional prison system was that that's a place where they sent people to be punished for what they did. But in reality, a prison, really, it should be a center for reform. It should be a place where people go because they've committed heinous crimes, many of them. What? Oh. Sorry about that, guys. You're not going to believe what I did. I didn't plug in the power cord on my phone. Can you believe that? I'm so sorry. All right. We'll get it right in a moment. Just give me a second here. Okay, let me just align it. So this is what happens when you're a one-man show. I'll never forget Oprah Winfrey saying that anything can happen in on live television. All right, let me just align this real quick. All right. We good? We're good. I'm so sorry. You know what I did? I didn't plug in my power on my phone. I'm using my phone as a webcam, and I forgot to plug in my power. That's so terrible. Anyway, My sincere apologies, and thank you again for your patience. You guys are so much. You're just wonderful people. Anyway, so what was I saying? You know, when you get to my age, you just forget stuff. Could somebody please remind me in the comments below? What was I talking about? What was I saying? We were talking about prison reform. So okay. Whoope, Victor. Thank you. I will. So I know that talking about prisons is a very controversial issue. And the reason I feel that especially opposition parties stay away from this topic because they don't want to be labeled as insensitive or people that don't have a heart for the people. But I must tell you that the topic of prison reform is a very controversial topic the world over, okay? Because it leads you to ask the question, this question here: why were prisons created? I mean, what are they for? What are correctional facilities for? Whenever you drive past a prison like Mukobeko or Chimbokaila, and you look at those edifices of justice, and you ask yourself the question, why are those edifices created? It's really simple. The short answer is this: to keep bad people away from a functioning society. Boom. I mean, that's what it is. There are people out there, unfortunately, because, you know, the word of God says the heart of man is desperately wicked. And there are people out there that commit the most horrible crimes that you can think of. And mankind has built a system that houses and that contains people that don't want to live by the rules, to contain them separately, away from a functioning society. Imagine for a moment, there was a movie, a very famous movie that was done. I think it was called The Purge. Do you remember the movie The Purge? The Purge was basically a movie that it talked about how, I think for one day, for 24 hours, there would be no police on the street. There would be no law enforcement. There would be no societal checks and balances. There was no behavioral check for 24 hours. Correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong. It could be longer, 36, 72 hours. But however long it was, there was a gap. Of course, this is fictional, but I'm trying to make a point. There was a gap, a 24-hour gap where you as a citizen can do whatever the heck you want. You can kill people, you can maim people, you can run over anyone you want, you can walk down the street and lop off people's heads. The law wouldn't visit you. Imagine for a moment if we lived in a lawless society. It would be chaos. So mankind devised a system that dictated that if you don't live by society's rules, if you cannot become a functioning member of society, you break the law, you kill people, you rape women, you rob homes, you burn houses, you cannot be a part of a functioning society. So they take you away. Now, different countries have different reform systems. And there's not one single perfect reform system. But basically, all countries agree that criminals, once they commit a crime, they go to prison, they go to jail, they go to the penitentiary. Okay? They're locked away. Now, once you do that, once you go to prison for a crime, for a felony. Now, let me explain. A felony is a crime that is more serious than a misdemeanor. Okay? A misdemeanor is, maybe you're walking down the street and you run a red light. I mean, you're driving down the street, you run a red light, and the police officer cautions you. That act of running or going through a red light, that's a misdemeanor. It's not completely bad. It's bad, but it's not really bad. They'll let you get away with it, with a warning. Don't do it again. They'll slap you on the wrist. Don't do that again. They'll give you a fine or something and say, pay this, but don't do it again. That's different. A misdemeanor is different from a felony. A felony is when you commit a serious crime like murder, rape, arson. Those are felonies. Now, when you are a felon is a person that commits a felony. A felon is a person that commits murder, rape, arson, a whole slew of stuff. They send you to prison. You become a felony. Guess what happens in that moment? You lose your right to certain freedoms. In other countries, when you are a felon, automatically you lose your right to vote. It's a direct consequence of your criminality. You lose your right to vote during incarceration and a few years after your release. It's different for every country. And I know in America, as a prisoner, as a felon, you're not allowed, you cannot vote while you are imprisoned, while you are incarcerated. You can't vote. It's not, the law over there says you've lost your right to vote. There's certain privileges, certain freedoms that you no longer have because of your felony, because you are a convicted felon. Are you with me? So this is the reason that when a person goes to prison for a felony, a heinous crime, and they're put away, certain things should be taken away from them as a direct consequence of their crime or their criminality. Now, listen, guys, we can talk here all night about the pros and cons of that. In fact, I would imagine that we wouldn't all agree on the same thing. There are many of you that would say, no, just let them out, just let them go for 2 weeks. They'll come back. And then there are others of you that say, and this is my position, others of you that say, well, you can't, it's not one size fits all. Now, of course, there's some language in there that, and I'm going to read it to you now. This is the statement. The Commissioner General stated that inmates would never return to correctional facilities if they behaved well. This is the Commissioner General here in Zambia talking about this new furlough, this new 2-week hiatus for prisoners. They're saying that if you behave well, you may not even have to come back. Now, here's the thing, guys. How do they know? How do they know that? How do they know that the person leaving is going to behave well? Or how do they ascertain that while you are incarcerated, you're behaving well? How do they know this? Here it is. A few weeks ago, we heard a horrible story about a 53-year-old man, a prisoner here in Zambia that had escaped, and subsequently he went and abducted a young 18-year-old girl, tortured, raped, and killed her. See, these are the realities that we have to deal with. These are the tough questions that we must ask. Now, of course, I know it's not one size fits all. There's certain prisoners that are they're people that are called model prisoners. You know what a model prisoner is? A model prisoner is someone that committed a crime. They got to the prison facility, the penitentiary, and they reflect and they truly feel remorseful for what they did. And they say, you know what? I want to change. I don't want to be this person. I did wrong and I should be punished for it. I see what I did was wrong. I'm so remorseful. I feel horrible about what I did. And I want to pay my debt to society. So if the law says you go to prison for 10 years, I'll serve my 10 years. But in the process of those 10 years, I want to be a better person. I want to be a good citizen. I want to be a law-abiding citizen. Those are model prisoners. I'll give you a good example of a modern prisoner in the Zambian context. Matthew Mohan. Matthew Mohan. You all know Matthew. In my view, Matthew Mohan is a model prisoner. Here's the guy that went through the system. He was convicted of murder. He's serving his time. He's been there for years. But look at what he's doing. Look at him now. Look at some of the awesome things he's doing while in prison, incarcerated. Matthew Mohan is a model prisoner. If Matthew Mohan today was released, in my view, he'd fit right in. He would, because he's reformed, in my view. Of course, some of you may think differently, but that's what I feel. He's reformed. So the system has people that are model prisoners, but not everyone is a model prisoner. And let's face it, in life, there are people that pretend to be something that they're not. So here it is, you've got a system now that says, well, you can go home for 2 weeks. And I realize there's a lot of red tape in that. I know, there's a lot of, for those of you that are reading it on the surface, don't for one moment think that it's as easy as an inmate to just walk up to the prison commissioner and say, Commissioner, I think I pain the for kunganda. Vampere 2 weeks kabuela. And then the prison commissioner says, oh, yo, therefore kusamfia. Oh, but tu kabuela ka kabuela. Okay, just bring the rubber stamp and boom. Aba baleti bakaya for 2 weeks. Vapeni ne akwendela vapeni but yakabuela. Guys, it's not that simple. You must know this. When you read between the lines, it's a tedious process. It's not made for everybody, and not everybody is eligible to go home for 2 weeks. This, in my view, is political talk. When you cut through the red tape, it's really politics at the end of the day. Ultimately, when the dust settles and when the dew dries, it really boils down to politics. Let me read something else to you. This is Dr. Chileche. Dr. Chileche, however, warned that unrepentant ones would go back to continue serving life sentences if they misbehave. Misbehave? Wow, misbehave is a fairly loose term. What do you mean by misbehave? Could you quantify that? Could you define that? Could you sort of bracket it and just give us a clear definition of the word misbehave? What does that mean? Well, what do you mean? You mean misbehave in the sense that you leave the toilet seat up after you use it, you've misbehaved? Or misbehave in the sense that, you leave the light on before you go to bed? What do you mean by misbehave? So these are the words that are being used, and they're open-ended. they're left up to people's interpretation. I personally think that it's dangerous to give the public the impression that the prison correctional facilities in Zambia are giving our Zambian prisoners an easy road out. I want that to sink in. I think it's wrong. I really do. I think it's wrong to give the impression that the prison service is trying to give prisoners who really should be behind bars. There are some prisoners that need to be there for the rest of their lives. There are some prisoners who have no business going home for 2 weeks. And I think it makes the public uneasy, especially when you read stories like some prison inmate escaped, and the first thing he did before he drank a glass of water, the first thing he did was he was on the hunt on the streets looking for some young, innocent, defenseless girl to rape, pillage, and ultimately murder. It makes us uncomfortable, I must tell you. As citizens that live and participate in a functioning society, that makes us nervous. You must know this. And my admonition, and I speak as a voter, my admonition to our political leaders is you shouldn't always play politics. Not with stuff like this. I mean, let me give you an interesting statistic. Some of you may not know this. Nationwide, Zambia, currently, right now, we have about approximately, this is an approximation, guys, because I know many of you're such fact checkers. Somebody's going to jump on here. No, they're not 23 million. I mean, 23,000. They are 22,998. You're wrong there, Mwewa. Approximately. Okay? Can we agree on that? Right now, there are approximately 23,000 inmates nationwide. And here it is. You've given 23,000 inmates the right to vote. Inmates. Guys, what is this? The whole essence of them being inmates means, or at least it should mean, that we have taken away some of your freedoms as a direct consequence of your criminality. Now, I'm of the belief that if you do truly reform, if you serve, if you pay your debt to society, and in the process of paying your debt to society, you evolve and you become a model citizen. You become a model citizen. At some stage, when you're eligible for parole, they let you out and you continue to prove yourself. Then the system should give you back some of your freedoms. I'm a big believer in that. I do not believe it's morally right to give incarcerated inmates a certain level of freedom that we that are part of a functioning society have. I don't believe that. You do the crime, do the time, prove yourself, prove that you are a functioning member of society. Then maybe the system will give you back your liberties and your freedoms. But to paint in broad strokes, while you are incarcerated, you get the right to vote, you get the right to go home for 2 weeks. What is this? Why? Now, I know it's sticky. I know it's controversial. And let me say something to you guys. I think it's wrong for you politicians to leave it up to us to start talking about this stuff. We're vloggers, man. We're not politicians. It's you, the politicians, that should be front and center of issues like this because they border not only on national security, but the security of every neighborhood. Let me tell you, imagine for a moment if I, for one moment, feel unsafe because a whole bunch of prisoners are allowed to go home for 2 weeks. I don't feel safe. I don't. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I do when I don't. So here it is. You got 23,000 inmates in this country. And you're going to give them the right to vote. And then you're going to give them the right to go home for 2 weeks. Which then in turn makes us feel unsafe. It's bad enough. It's bad enough when an inmate goes through the system, he's released, he pays his debt to society. It's bad enough that there's some inmates that go right back to their old ways. That's bad enough. But I don't know. Now you add the element of, well, while you serve your time, you could go home for 2 weeks. What the heck is that about? Why would you make me feel unsafe? For what? For politics? Come on. I don't know about you guys. I personally don't like it. Personally don't like it. All right, I got to go. That's what I had to share with you. God bless you. I got to go home. I can't take your phone calls and stuff. So, because I've been here all day. But anyway, that's what I wanted to offload. I just wanted to share that with you. Okay. Maybe I'll share a couple of comments here. Now, watch this. Look at this. This is what I don't get. This is Peter Sheikh says, may we not only, here it is. May we not only leave this to God, fellow Zambians, but let's go all out on the 12th of August to use our voters' cards wisely. The power is in our hands and not them. Why would you leave it to God? God has given us choices and voices to express ourselves, of course, within the right context. But when Peter Shakes, I'm trying to understand what you're saying, but I personally don't subscribe to fatalism. You know what fatalism is? Fatalism is when you say, oh, well, God's will, whatever happens, happens. I've got no control. I'm just riding the wave of destiny. No, God hasn't designed us like that. We're not wired that way. God has designed us with the ability and the choice to choose. That's how we're wired. Don't adopt this fatalist mentality. Come on, guys. Come on. All right. Okay, here's the question. Banji says, if they don't go back, whose fault will it be without traceable addresses? They will relocate to other places and change their identity and never return. Very dangerous move. Cry, my beloved country. What is going on, Kanshi? I've never heard of such. I'll be honest with you. I've never heard of such either. There's, guys, underneath these political statements, and I've said it and I'll say it again. This really, at the end of the day, when the dust settles, at the end of the day, when the dust settles and the dew dries, this really is politics. But underneath these political pronouncements is a heap of red tape. They know that. The Ministry of Home Affairs knows. They know that an inmate cannot go home just as easily as 1, 2, 3. An inmate cannot walk up to the door and say, hey, you know what? I need 2 weeks. I need 2 weeks away from this place because Bantu na la pena. Na la semuka, just give me 2 weeks away from this place. When I come back, I would have regained my senses, but I need a 2 weeks break. The Ministry of Home Affairs knows that that's not how it works. But when you use political language that tickles the ears of inmates, there's not one inmate that will not be happy about this. Every inmate that is incarcerated from east to west, from north to south, here in the beautiful country of Zambia, every single solitary inmate is dancing and doing the cha-cha because of this new policy. But the powers that be, Home Affairs knows. They know that this pronouncement, this pronouncement is buried, is inundated in mountains of red tape. But why give us, who needs the aggravation of giving us the anxiety of thinking that it's as easy as 1, 2, 3? Because that's the impression you're giving us. The impression you politicians are giving us is that an inmate can just walk over to you and say, I need to go home. I'm stressed, man. 2 weeks is all I need. But we know that's not the case. But don't aggravate us by giving us that impression, because that's what you're doing. Guys, come on. Goodness. Penelope. And let me just say, the correct pronunciation is Penelope, okay? It is not Penelope. Penelope says, Wafia. There's one word you missed out of that, Penelope. You forgot to add ala Wafia. Phyllis Chilango says the whole world is laughing at us. Prison reform is a very sticky situation. I mean, here, we have a country, guys, and as far as I know, the only president, I don't know this for a fact. I haven't seen the statistics, but I'm 51 years old, 52, 51 years old. When I was growing up as a young person, we used to hear that the only president that ever signed death, what do you call it? Death warrant? Not death warrants. Is it a death warrant? Yeah, I guess death warrant. If I'm wrong, correct me. The only president we've ever had that has ever signed death warrants was Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. Every subsequent president doesn't sign them. Why? Because we've got this idea that no, only God can judge, only God gives life and God can take it away. But guys, I'm telling you, there's certain criminals, there are criminals in this country, in the world. They don't deserve to live. They don't. Now, I know that is very difficult for some of you to wrap your brain around that. But remember, I'm not a politician, so I don't have to pander to people. Politicians can't say this. Why? Because they're afraid to lose votes. Voters will look at them and say, oh, really? You is that how you feel? You're darn right that's how I feel. Well, we're not going to vote for you then. You see what they have to contend with? But I really believe that. I believe that there are people, I mean, some of the stories, you guys, you sit, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to go home. Many of you sit and you watch DSTV and you watch the Crime Channel. And some of the stories on the Crime Channel are they're so diabolical, so demonic, so dastardly. You sit there and you think to yourself, but what you don't realize is the same criminals America has, the same serial killers that America has are the same serial killers we have here in Zambia. The only difference is nobody has decided to do a CSI series on Zambian cases. But if you were to go to the courthouse and get the court documents and read the cases, some of the stuff that happens in this country, you know why it happens? Because it's the heart of man. Whenever you see people are people, honey, it doesn't matter where they're from, whether they're from here or Memphis, Tennessee, or Shreveport, Louisiana, or Bogalusa, Tennessee, or Bogalusa, Miami. People are the same. Why? Because the heart of man is desperately wicked. And having said that, there are people that do the most heinous crimes, that they commit the most diabolical crimes. They're people that don't deserve to live. They don't. They're people that deserve, their names should have a line through them instead of under them. Because you lose your right to be a part of a functioning society when you do certain things. So, in closing, because I've been speaking now for 47 minutes. My goodness. In closing, this is a very controversial topic, and I really hope our leaders are looking at the bigger picture. Guys, take care of yourselves and each other.